So I really enjoy some of the vlog style videos that Amanda Forever Wolf Films has done over the years. Just kind of going back through the channel. And one of the ones that stuck out to me was about Frankenstein, about that sort of like creation of a sentient being in a setting where it was sort of just viewed as wrong. And I guess I wanted to just riff off of that a little bit and think about, in these like sort of horror sci-fi settings, this like creation of sentience, of new life is just like viewed as like, oof, no, like don't do that. That's sketchy, that's questionable, it's dangerous, it's it's like unholy or unnatural, it's playing God. But to create a baby, there's no problem there. That creation of sentience is an unambiguous good. To me, I just don't see like a meaningful distinction here, because in both cases you're creating sentience, like you're creating a being that is aware of itself, has a memory of bad things, can worry about the future. It, can be insecure and afraid and lonely. So like in both the sci-fi quote unquote like unnatural births and the human natural birth, I mean, both of them have the same like net effect of creating a being that can suffer. So let's just like look a little bit more at that. So I think, just to lay it out one more time, so you have, I'm going to call them quote unquote like unnatural births on one hand, which are things like necromancy, Frankenstein, let's see, what was the other one I had in mind? The creation of sentient AI, or monsters converting other monsters, like sometimes werewolves are like that, or zombies are like that, or vampires are like that, where like you get bit and then you're converted to, you're sort of reborn as a werewolf or zombie or whatever. So anyway, so that's kind of what we're looking at. And I think what natalists would say, why they would say that those things are wrong while traditional childbearing is right or good, I think they would say first that the first class are unnatural and that human childbearing is natural. And so, that's a classic appeal to nature fallacy. That's literally just like one of the classic fallacies. So I'm not going to spend much time talking about that, because it's literally just a fallacy that is more or less meaningless. And beyond that, how natural is, I guess I would say if you wanted to make an argument like against that, you could say, beyond the fallacy thing, you could say like, well, so many people do IVF and so many people do C-sections and so many people do epidurals and so many people do this and do that. And it's like, like I wouldn't call that unnatural or wrong or whatever. Like natural doesn't mean anything, it's just like a construct. But it's like, I don't know. There's a lot of science involved in the creation of new life, There's a lot of wizardry involved there. So it's not just like a purely like, you're out there in the grass and the flowers and the child just blooms forth, It's not like that or anything. So that's one thing that I think they would say. And then they would also say something probably like, oh, like you're playing God, don't do that. It's playing God to make a sentient life that is not the way, it's not like the sentient life approved process that was given to us by God. And of course, like, to me, just any appeal to religion should not be taken seriously because it's not real. So like, I just don't even know what to say to that. But like, I mean, to me, it's any kind of, it's, people play God all the time. If you want to use that rationale when it comes to creating or not creating sentient life. So I don't see how there's like a meaningful difference between, like how is it playing God to create a sentient AI, but not playing God to create a sentient human baby, like intentionally, I'm not talking about like an unintentional birth here. I'm talking about intentional conception of a child. I just don't see how there's a meaningful difference in like the playing God quality of that in any way. Yeah, and I guess just one last note here before I call it a day is, in these fictional stories about the creation of new life and the cautionary tales and it's pretty much always viewed as like a really hefty moral consideration. Like, dang, are you sure you want to create this new sentient being? Like, think about how crazy that is, that like they're gonna have to be aware of themselves and they're gonna be like this being in the world, and like they're gonna know that you created them, and they're gonna have to like find their place and their meaning, and like they could be evil, they could be bad. Like, isn't it better just to leave them in non-existence? That's like with like Frankenstein and sentient AI and necromancy, like it's like, look, that all applies to a human child. Like, they could be evil. They are going to have to be self-aware in a very uncomfortable way. They are going to have to sort out their own place in all of it. And it's just not, it's just interesting to me how like those moral considerations are like considered to be really hefty and really like serious in these like sci-fi fantasy tropes, like stories. But then when it's a human life, those are put aside, and it's just like an unambiguous good miracle moment. Like, there's no concern about, what about the horror aspects of this, and what about the loneliness aspects of this, and what about the struggle, and what about the confusion, and what about the dark aspects of it, and what about, what if they are evil? Like, I just don't understand how, I just think it's yet another interesting inconsistency in the mind of, collective mind of natalists. So I'm going to call this one a day and talk to you in the next one.